Okay, so once again, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you for attending this second webinar in our series focused on marketing automation. Marketing automation and the leveraging of customer data is certainly an area where there is a lot happening, a lot of changes taking place. And so we at Scribe decided to move away from some of our very product, demonstration, focus type webinars to really launch this educational series to help our customers, our partners, and our prospects really learn about what is the latest and greatest, what are the innovative things that are going on. And it's very helpful for us to be able to partner with someone like Marketo to really deliver this content because they, of course, know so much more about it than even Scribe does. Today's session is going to focus on really graduating beyond email service providers. That's where many of us have started in the marketing automation space, but there's so much more that we have to really leverage nowadays. So a couple of housekeeping items. Voice over IP is enabled for those that want to utilize that as opposed to the phone. The phone lines are muted as a way to keep out distractions. However, the presentation is about 50 minutes long, so we have left 10 minutes for questions at the end. And what we will do is certainly read the questions out loud so that everyone understands what's being asked. We are going to ask that you submit your questions via the GoToWebinar question panel. So if you just type in your questions, we'll read them out loud, and then in most cases, I'm sure my co-presenter John will be the person answering the question, but if it's something for me, I'll answer it, and then we'll move on to the next question. We will post these slides in the recording, and you will receive a follow-up email within the next 24 hours. So you will be able to have access to this information to forward along to a colleague or to review it yourself again. Okay, so I'm Lynn Harrington. I'm the Director of ISV Enablement here at Scribe, and what that really means is I work with our partners such as Marketo to really make sure that the technology partnership that our companies have, which is exciting, but more importantly, really turns into revenue. And so I work with people like John and others at Marketo to make sure that our prospects, customers, and partners really understand what the offering is all about and how end user customers can really get value from combining the capabilities of Marketo and Scribe to really leverage their customer data in their marketing activities. I'm really excited today to be joined by John Miller from Marketo, and I was going to spend a little more time on the introduction, but actually John is a great presenter and has and can do a better job than I can certainly do. So with that, I'm going to change the presentation to John and let him take over and get started.
Well, great. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. And it looks like you can see my screen. So with no further ado, let's just jump right in talking about graduating from email service provider to marketing automation, because we've got a ton of content to cover. So just a little bit about me. I am John Miller. I am the Vice President of Marketing and a co-founder here at Marketo. Marketo obviously is a provider of marketing automation software. Just some fun facts about me. I was born in Ethiopia. People ask me why, and I explained that I wanted to be close to my parents. My dad was in the Army at the time. My stupid human trick is that I can dislocate my thumbs at will, although I'm not double jointed. That has nothing to do with marketing. Perhaps of more relevance, I studied physics at Harvard and was the captain of my high school debate team and on the newspaper staff, which basically means I learned how to analyze numbers and think critically, and I learned how to write and communicate. I think marketing has changed a lot in the last 15 years, and it turns out those two skills are probably the most important skills that people should have in sort of modern relationship marketing. And so without meaning to, I ended up getting sort of the exact right experience. As I said, my son was born, I'm the son of Marketo, my son was born the same month, so it's very easy for me to keep track that they are both 7 years old at this point. So what we're going to talk about today is marketing automation and why it's time to move beyond basic old email. I'll start with the basics. What is marketing automation and some of the common features, just so you kind of have a good grounding of the topics, and then we're going to really dive in, spend most of the time on 4 key areas. How marketing automation helps you with your relevance, to have multi-channel conversations, have a more effective sales team, and get the right metrics going. So let's begin with what is marketing automation and why is it important? So marketing automation is a technology that streamlines and automates your marketing tasks so that companies can increase their operational efficiency and grow their revenue faster. It is a technology, although as we'll talk about, that goes beyond the technology in terms of all the business management and change management you need to kind of ultimately be successful about it. And it's really, kind of has 2 sides of the coin, both to grow your company faster and to sort of make everything a little bit more efficient. Sorry about those flashes there. So let me explain just a minute more what I mean by the word automation. Here's an example of a campaign that is quote-unquote automated. Let's say we're doing an event, like a webinar, for example, today. You might send the invitation. Now, without marketing automation, what you're going to do is you have to wait 3 days and then pull a list, static list from the webinar tool to see, well, who's attended, who's registered. And then those people you may pull out from another email that you might send. And send them a confirmation. Everybody else, you're going to have to then manually send them maybe another chance, a reminder to invite. The more reminders you want to send, the more confirmations you want to send, the more complicated the whole process ends up being with pulling lists manually and remembering in your calendar when to do what. Then the webinar happens, and you wait, maybe a day, and again, you're pulling manual lists, and then you want to send an email either to the people who attended or a different one to people who didn't attend. Right? Lots of manual work, but with automation, as you see here, you can just set that up all at once at the beginning and cruise through no problems. The system takes care of things for you. So sounds great, right? But automation, all this stuff sounds good, but what happens when you have millions of contacts, right? Well, when you have millions of contacts, you can't do these processes manually. You have to have technology to help you. Otherwise, it's like Lucille Ball at the candy factory. When the chocolates are kind of moving on down the belt slowly, everything's easy peasy. But as soon as they start moving faster and faster, just like you have hundreds of thousands of millions of leads, if you don't have the right technology, you're shoving chocolate down your dress and in your hat. That's not good for anybody. So let's go over some of the common features in a marketing automation solution. These are very simple slides, and I'll move through them quickly. First, and perhaps in many people's minds foremost, marketing automation includes email marketing. If you have marketing automation, you do not need a separate email service provider. And in fact, most companies will fund at least part of their marketing automation investment by stop paying, per email, if you will, through the traditional batch and blast ESP pricing model. Marketing automation includes everything you would get from an email service provider. But there's so much more. Marketing automation also includes landing pages and forms. Email clicks have to go somewhere, and you can easily, the marketer can create PowerPoint or landing pages and registration forms and marketing automation as easily as they could create a PowerPoint slide. Marketing automation includes behavior tracking. So it puts, like a Marketo will put 2 lines of JavaScript on the website. First-party cookie people, when they visit, known or anonymous visitors, and it lets you track what they do. You can track what emails they open, what links they click, what keywords they use, what content they download, and start to build a really cohesive profile of who they are and what they do. That information then gets stored in a marketing database of record. This is really the core of a marketing automation system, is the database. It's a single record of all the interactions that a company's marketing department has with a customer or a prospect. Behaviors plus demographics plus campaign history. And what that database does is it synchronizes with the CRM system like Microsoft Dynamics, so that way you still have completely single view of the customer, but the marketing automation system has so much more information that's relevant to the marketers. On top of that database then is the workflow tool, the automation. The system lets you automate campaigns, customer conversations, as well as business processes. And we're going to give examples of all of these as we go through the presentation. A specific type of process that people usually automate is scoring. the ability to sort of track, those behaviors and assign different point values to things. And ultimately, therefore, the higher score leads are the ones that are the most interested, the most engaged, the most ready for the sales team. And that's where lead management comes in. Lead management are the workflows that pass the lead over to the sales team at the right time, alert them that there's a new high-quality lead, maybe manage the service level agreements to make sure they follow up. And if they don't follow up, then maybe reassigning to somebody else. Lead management also includes the concept of lead nurturing. That's the ability to build dialogues to keep in touch with prospects who aren't yet ready to buy instead of sending everybody over to the sales team. Many marketing automation tools will give functionality to actually generate leads at the top of the funnel, managing your trade shows, your webinars, your pay-per-click campaigns, your organic search campaigns, and so on. So it's not just managing who you've got already, but helping you to find new people. A specific kind of program that systems track are events, helping you to know who's at the event, who's registered for the event. This is online events like webinars, as well as offline events like seminars and trade shows. And then ultimately track how people move through all the different statuses and progressions of the event. Deep CRM integration is a part of most marketing automation systems. Marketo in particular has very deep integration into Microsoft Dynamics. So that way salespeople can have access to all that rich, relevant information. I'll show you a screenshot of what that looks like later. And then there's also social marketing capabilities, the ability to run referral campaigns and sweepstakes and make sure that your campaigns, every campaign you're doing has a social sharing component to it. Last but certainly not least then is the marketing analytics, the ability to track how people, what is marketing's impact on revenue, ultimately tie marketing touches to sales opportunities so that you can connect the dots for ROI and see how people move through the revenue cycle over time. Ultimately making marketing really a much deeper view of part of the revenue team. So this is a much more complicated slide than the others. This is a table that compares all the stuff that I just talked about that you get in marketing automation with what you get from a traditional email service provider. You obviously have the ability in both to send mass emails, to track open rates and clicks, but marketing automation includes so much more. All these things that I talked about that you don't get with an email service provider. I couldn't even cover all the functionality that marketing automation has. So you can actually download a sample RFP template from our website at marketo.com/RFP. But if I'm going to leave kind of just two takeaways from all this functionality discussion that I just had, the first is that marketing automation is more than the sum of the parts. It includes all these things I just talked about in a single integrated platform, which means that it makes the marketer's job a lot less complicated to not have to worry about tying things together and making everything talk. It is a single system that delivers everything marketing needs. The other key takeaway that I want from kind of that functionality discussion is how marketing automation can help you create marketing that people actually love. I want to spend a minute on this. The word automation, I think, gives the category sometimes a bad reputation because the word automation suggests to people, machines and inhuman communications, and not really stuff that inspires passion in people. But as I want to talk about through really the rest of this presentation, all that functionality that I just went over is actually, I think, the essential sets of technology and functionality that we need to break through the clutter and engage with today's modern, digitally empowered marketer. Marketing is not the same as it was 10 years ago. Standard, batch, and blast, people don't love to get that. I think that this is the technology that actually will enable us to build meaningful relationships with our customers. And I think there are, as I said earlier, 4 key topics behind that. Relevance, conversations, not campaigns, not blasting salespeople over to people who aren't yet ready to talk to sales, and then a sophisticated ability to really start to learn and understand what works. So let's go over each of the 4 of these in turn, beginning with relevance. How does marketing automation help your marketing to be more relevant than it can be with an email service provider? Let's begin with just like the background and the context. You know, between all the marketers out there that are trying to reach a customer and all the batching and blasting that's going on and all the irrelevant and unpersonalized messages that are happening, you know, this is kind of what it feels like to be a consumer today. You know, according to some research from a company called from Adbusters, the average customer will be exposed to almost 3,000 media messages each and every day, but they're only going to pay attention to 52, and the next day they're only going to remember 4 marketing messages that they get in each given day. So it's kind of like your prospect is the sponge, and all the marketing messages are all the water that's sitting in them. That sponge can only absorb, you know, so much, can only absorb 4 marketing messages. So how do you ensure that your message is one of the 4 that actually gets absorbed? The answer, not surprisingly, is to be relevant. Right? Customers are really good at opting out, tuning out, screening out all those irrelevant messages. But they pay attention to messages that come from their family, their friends. They pay attention to messages that are really, you know, highly relevant, you know, and they actually subscribe to certain lists because those are really relevant. If you can get hyper relevant to your customers, you are going to be able to break through and be one of those 4. So how do you achieve that relevance? Well, the first is that you can't be relevant by definition when your communications are broad. This is some research that Marketo did that compared, you know, thousands of different email sends and looked at how engaging each of those different email sends were. Now, so the horizontal axis here is what big was the email blast. The vertical axis is showing a unique metric that Marketo calculates called the engagement score. Essentially, it combines open, click, unsubscribe, conversion, and a few other things into a single metric that makes it easier to compare campaigns to each other. What you see is a very direct relation between bigger campaigns being less engaging, with campaigns that are over 100,000 sends being, you know, approximately a third as engaging as very relevant, segmented, targeted campaigns. So that's first and foremost. You know, you want, you know, the smaller your sends, the more relevant, the better. Here's another example of a Marketo campaign that takes things even further, that sort of starts to put people into specific one-to-one tracks based on their specific behaviors. So what we're doing is we listen for certain things that somebody might do. Maybe they download content related to the Microsoft Dynamics ecosystem, or they attend an event that's very, again, specific around Microsoft Dynamics. We're going to look at those behaviors, and when we see one of those, we're going to say this person is interested in Microsoft Dynamics, and we're going to then put them into what we call a triggered interest track, which is very specific to that interest that we've seen. Everybody else stays in kind of our quote-unquote our standard nurture track, our standard way of just keeping in touch with people. But what you see from the slide here, the data shows that when we're able to put people into these targeted triggered interests, we get about 50% higher open rates, 50% higher click rates, and ultimately, 150% higher overall, people actually clicking on those emails. That's what we're looking to see. So ultimately, the theme from all these is that targeting your emails and triggering them with behaviors that that customer has done is dramatically important. And, things like if you just look on the email database, well, what have they opened? What have they clicked on? What emails did they convert and what did they forward? Those all tell you clues about, what that consumer might be interested in. Socially, you can track things. So did that consumer mention you on Twitter, or did they share your content on social networks? Which kinds of content are they sharing? We talked a little bit about the behavior tracking on a website. So do they visit the website? What pages do they go to? How recently have they been to the site? What content did they download and what keywords did they use? Those are all important parts of that behavioral database so that you can do that hyper-targeting and that hyper-relevance. Similarly, their campaign history. Just tracking, what campaigns you've sent to somebody and which ones they responded to, which ones they didn't respond to, will be key parts of helping you to see what's going to be the most relevant message to somebody. And then last but certainly not least, especially for B2C industries, is the transactional history. What has this person actually bought? If it's a financial services company, did they just make a deposit? Did they just make a withdrawal? Tracking all these behaviors in that integrated marketing database and using that to trigger and fire campaigns equals more relevance. But that's not so easy with a traditional email service provider. Email service providers tend to let you track things like email behaviors in their local database, but they don't really have connections to the other touch points, like so that you can't easily know what web pages that person has visited, what emails have they clicked, what have they shared socially, and what transactions have they purchased. Now, I'm not saying you can't do that with those tools. You can, but they tend to be sort of complicated, requiring API calls or SAS queries, or somebody who goes into the database and writes SQL queries. And frankly, that's kind of complicated and hard for a lot of companies, especially when you have marketers who want to do it. So, I'm a marketer. I don't want to have to go wait for somebody to write SQL code for me to pull my list if my list wants to have all this behavioral relevance. So a marketing automation system like Marketo lets you look at your email behaviors, your social behaviors, a bunch of other kinds of things here, and easily create queries like, give me everybody who visited one of our pricing web pages in the last 30 days. Easy drag and drop. Or just everybody who filled out a form, like, contact us. Again, easy drag and drop. Or maybe something a little more sophisticated. Give me everybody who shared some of my, a particular piece of my content and where they shared it. So net on that section, behaviors equal relevance. Marketing automation makes it a lot easier because it has that rich marketing database at the core to make your campaigns more relevant. All right, let's move on to the second point, which is conversations, not campaigns. Let's start with just a short kind of history of how email got to where email is today. It started really kind of evolving from the direct mail mindset, things like promotions and offers, lists, if you will, the idea of sending the same message frequently and rapidly to many different people. And if you'll recall, the direct mail world had kind of a 1% to 2% response rate was considered good. This was really the military mentality applied to marketing. Again, campaigns and blasts and things like that. And frankly, that's where batch and blast email really kind of evolved, was from that campaign direct mail mindset. The problem, though, is that nobody wants to get blasted. They got the word blast. What do you imagine? It's like a shotgun, a wide pattern, random spread, unfocused, an imprecise tool where the end result is that, sometimes it leaves more damage than any benefit you might have gained. Getting blasted hurts. And I would say other terms related that are commonly used in email, like hit the database and e-shot, are just as bad. So nobody wants to get blasted. When you do, it ends up kind of feeling a little bit like, this here, where it's blah, 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 me, blah, blah, me, I, blah, blah, and the customer's reaction ultimately is groan. For those of you who don't recall, the guy on the left is supposed to look like me. I call him Johnny the Blockhead. So you don't want to be Johnny the Blockhead, who's just, blasting irrelevant communications to your customers. What you want are engaging conversations that frankly kind of look like this. I like this picture because those two women look like they're having a really interesting, engaging conversation. And a big part of that is that it's as much about listening and reacting and responding as it is about, making sure you're getting your point across. So you don't want to be John in the blockhead. You want conversations that look like this, which sounds good. So, if it's so great, why aren't more marketers doing this? Well, the problem is I think most tools, most solutions tend to provide a kind of a Visio flow style diagram for solving the problem that kind of looks like this. Send an email. If they respond, do this. Otherwise, do that, if you will. And that looks great on a whiteboard, and it seems simple in principle. But it very quickly becomes much more complicated as you start thinking about real-world scenarios. Because, your customers don't always wait for you to send them an email to respond. And sometimes they come to your website. And sometimes they do other things you don't expect. And sometimes your competitors have something in the marketplace. And sometimes you have a new piece of content. And sometimes you have a webinar that you want to put into the mix. When you start trying to rewire a Visio flow diagram to make it work, it truly and very quickly ends up looking a little bit like this, a little bit like spaghetti. And that stuff is just frankly way too complicated. Not good for anybody. Some of the challenges that you run into with spaghetti diagrams is that anytime you want to add new content, it just takes forever. Right? If you have a new white paper you want to get into the nurturing, how do you rewire it to make it work so that everybody gets it without breaking where everybody is already in the flow? It means that you very rapidly end up sending the same content to people that they've already seen. Because again, it's too hard to know kind of who's done what and split these Visio flow diagrams accordingly. It also makes it really hard to manage how much email people get overall. Right? You could very rapidly end up with somebody in 2 or 3 different tracks getting 2 or 3 different emails on the same day. So that's not good. So the question is, what if there was a better way to do this? And I think that's really where marketing automation helps to come in. So this here is a screenshot of Marketo. These are what we call smart streams. And very easily, they let the marketer to just, let me highlight it here for you. Lets you just drag content from the left side onto any of the different smart streams that you want. Drag and drop to reorder the flow of things. You can see like some content is grayed out because it's not active based on time schedules. You only want that webinar emails to go out during a certain time period. And the system keeps track of where everybody is. So each week, somebody's going to, every Tuesday at 8:15, this stream will send. And you're going to get the highest piece of content that you haven't received before. So somebody brand new will pop in the top and receive this one. But somebody who's been in the system for a while might get this one. And then if I drag a new piece of content to the top, next week both people will get it. The week after that, they'll both be in the right place for where they're supposed to be. So this is a much, much easier way to build these dialogues with your prospects over time. So, instead of programming when you have new content, you just drag and drop new content. Instead of sending people stuff that's expired, you can have the system keep track of expiration dates for you. Instead of sending stuff people have already seen, the system makes sure you never send the same content twice. Instead of overwhelming people with too many emails, the system can make sure not to send something if the frequency limit has hit. And if somebody gets to the end of the track, you can sort of make sure to automatically trigger them to a new track. So that's the conversations, not campaigns. The third thing I wanted to talk about is making the sales team smarter, in particular with scoring to help them pick out the good ones from the bad ones. I want to sort of use the analogy of a big dance. A lot of lead generation today is all about kind of getting people to the dance, right? You got them to fill out a form. You got them to register on your website. But today's buyers don't want to engage with sales when they first show up. right? They don't want to talk to sales until they have done their research. And according to Forrester, they don't want to talk to sales until they are 60 to 90% done with the buying cycle, which basically is like they're showing up at the dance, but they're not ready to dance yet. And if you're the annoying sales guy who pounces on them when they first show up, you're probably going to alienate them. So your best strategy then is, instead of pouncing right up front, is to flirt a little bit. And by flirting, I mean get to know them, maybe educate them and entertain them. Don't be too pushy. Give them space when they need it. Don't talk about yourself, but really talk about stuff that's interesting and relevant to them. And maybe every once in a while you can touch their arm and let them know you're interested in moving things, further. And with that effective flirting, what you're doing is you're going to dramatically increase the likelihood that when they want to dance, that they may actually come to you or be receptive to you asking them. The flip, and that's what I call lead nurturing. And the flip side of lead nurturing then is lead scoring, which is a methodology for ranking your potential customers in terms of the readiness to purchase. And I think there's 3 dimensions to scoring. First is the fit, right? Which is how attracted am I to you? How interested am I in you? Interest tells me, are you interested in me? And to have a relationship, we need both of those things. But even that's not enough, because you also need, the timing needs to be right. I could be interested in you and you could be interested in me, but you could be married. And so what you need is also to track, are they in a buying cycle, to see if the timing's right. You need all 3 of those to have good lead scoring. Email service providers don't do any of this. Now, where do you get the information from a marketing automation system to do this kind of scoring? Well, the demographic, the fit stuff, tends to come from a form fill out or from a data augmentation. But the behavior, the engagement and the buying intent tends to come from tracking people's behaviors. We track latent behaviors like, what content, downloading early stage content or reading a blog that sort of shows engagement. And if they don't do anything after a while, we might decay their score. But then there's a subset of behaviors that we know show actual, buying intent, visiting our pricing pages, watching our detailed demos, downloading late-stage content, and even using the keyword, a branded keyword like Marketo. The example there is, if you search for digital camera or marketing automation, you're probably doing research. But if you search for Canon EOS 6D or for the word Marketo, you're probably much further along in the buying process. So basically, we're able to build up a lead score over time that shows how your fit is, which we indicate here. This is what it looks like inside Microsoft Dynamics or the CRM system. So you have your fit score, which we show with these stars, and that shows how interested we are in you based on your demographics. And then you have your flames, which show your priority, how hot you are, what's your buying intent and your engagement with us. And then we have this view of interesting moments that let people see exactly what this person has done over time. And it's not, we have all their web activity, all their email activity, but the interesting moments help us to synthesize it up into the stuff that we know sales ultimately really cares about. And that's right inside the CRM system. Okay, last topic is the right metrics. How do we measure marketing's impact using marketing automation? How is that better than what you get with an email service provider? So let's begin with the basic email metrics. So you obviously want to be able to track things like open rate, click rate, unsubscribe, bounce rate, and so on. You can do that with marketing automation. This is a screenshot from our analytics tool that shows, in this case, the best time and day of the week to send based on how many clicks we get. For us, that means Wednesday midday. That doesn't mean that you should all go away and start thinking, I'm going to send all my emails Wednesday at midday. You got to test it. You got to learn what's right for your company, and that's why we provide the tools. However, as I alluded to earlier, open, click, etc. by themselves make it a little hard to measure what's going on, because let's say email A had a great open rate, but email B had a great click-through rate, but maybe a moderate unsubscribe rate, and then email C drove a lot of conversions, right, from the right kinds of people. Which is the best email? So it's hard to tell, when you're sort of looking at these metrics independently. And that's ultimately why Marketo does provide this engagement score that I alluded to earlier. This is a single number that sort of shows all the interest. You can see the engagement for the track overall, as well as for the engagement from each email or interaction in the track. And my favorite feature is you can see how engagement for the track changes over time. Does it go up or go down based as you make changes? So if you tweak an email, make the subject line better, does engagement go up? And that's ultimately what you hope to see. So powerful metrics just around email and your communications. But at the end of the day, your CEO doesn't really care about the open rate, and your CFO doesn't care about your click rate. The executives, if you want to build marketing's power and credibility, the executives care about your ability to track whether or not marketing is really having an impact on revenue. And marketing automation helps you do that as well. Let me first talk about the return side of things. Because turns out, not surprisingly, measuring return is hard. And the reason why it's hard is because nobody buys your product just because of the first campaign you did or the last campaign you did. On average, there's 7 touches that are needed to convert somebody into a sale. And especially in a B2B context, it's 7 touches times multiple people, because there's IT and there's business and there are executives and there are users and so on and so on. And ultimately, your marketing is touching all those people, and you need to be able to figure out, what's actually really driving revenue for your company. So we do that first and foremost by letting you track all the marketing interactions that happen across people. So this is what we call the Opportunity Influence Analyzer. On the left axis, we're showing the cumulative number of interactions that we've had with that account, and the horizontal axis shows time. And on the right-hand side, we are looking at the different people that are associated with the account. Now, in this case, you'll notice there's nobody has an opportunity role, which means the salesperson hasn't tied any people to this deal. And that means, according to a CRM system, it would say that marketing is not really having any impact, because marketing impacts people. But we can see that there are multiple people here that marketing has had meaningful interactions with. And by clicking their checkboxes, we all of a sudden see that this account, marketing has actually been working this account for 2 years. And so what we can do then when we want to start thinking about ROI is, you could do what's called, first touch or last touch, right? First touch would say, well, let's give all the credit to the deal to this campaign over here where we met them. Last touch might say, well, let's give all the credit over here to the campaign that happened right before they became an opportunity. Or multi-touch is going to take the value of the deal and spread it out across all the interactions that you've had with the account over time. So first touch, last touch, multi-touch are all different ways to think about allocating the value of a deal to different marketing programs. So if I do that at Marketo, so hold that thought, first touch, multi-touch, and so on. I need to clear my drawings. So that's the return side of things, is tracking the touches on the account and allocating revenue to things. The other side of ROI is to track the investments that you're making at an account. And Marketo provides a tool called financial management that lets you do that, lets you see exactly what you are spending, your actuals versus your plan, which is your budget, versus your forecast, which is what you think you're going to spend. At any given point in time, it's easy to move budgets around if there's leftover spending as you near the end of the quarter. And it's a great way for distributed teams ultimately to track their spending and making sure that they're in compliance with budget. So you have, you're tracking your return through integration to CRM. You're tracking your investment through integration to the financial systems. Marketing automation is tying those together. And ultimately can generate reports that look like this, among other things. This is some real data from Marketo that shows what actually works for generating pipeline. So you see different program channels, the website, our paid online advertising, webinars, nurturing, trade shows. We're tracking our investment, in this case just a marginal program dollars. I'm not allocating people time to any of these things. I see first touch opportunities, which is back to the allocation I was talking about before, where did we meet the people, where the lead source, if you will. But I also see multi-touch opportunities, which are, again, where I'm spreading out the opportunity across multiple touches to get a better sense of, really what's driving things. And then I'm able to see the ratio of one to the other to really start to get a sense of what's working, what's not working. So very easy ability for the marketer with marketing automation to see exactly what's working, what's not, and what's driving ROI. The other thing you get with marketing automation is the ability to really start to understand the revenue cycle. So this is a typical revenue cycle. This is actually Marketo's own internal revenue cycle that we use for our business. The green line down the center is what we call the success path. So we see how people can enter our system and be known, anonymous to known, to engaged, to target, to contacted, to sales lead, opportunity, customer. But you can also see that deals sometimes don't follow that linear path, right? A lead can get recycled, or somebody being nurtured can go inactive and come back around again. The system keeps track of where everybody is and when movement happens, and we can then do analytics on it that I like to think of as my Google Analytics for revenue. It looks a little bit like this. For each of my key stages, I can track, my balance, which is how many people do I have with my reach, my flow, which is movement from stage to stage to stage. Conversion rates and velocities are pretty self-explanatory. What's kind of even more exciting is you can drill into these things, and how does it vary based upon product type or business unit or lead source? And how are these things trending over time? Are they going up or going down? You can't get that kind of trend data out of a CRM system because it's operational. We actually build a data warehouse underneath, and you can't get that from an email marketing system because they just don't have that kind of functionality. Okay, so 45 minutes, and everything that you ever wanted to know probably, and then some, about marketing automation and how it provides more for customers and clients than email service providers do. If you want to learn even more, I wrote a book called The Definitive Guide to Marketing Automation. It's about 100 pages long, very scannable and easy to read, available for free on the Marketo website at marketo.com/DG2MA. So feel free to grab that, as well as download some other resources off of our site. And I'll just wrap with a little bit about Marketo. As I said earlier, we are a marketing automation software company. I think we have over 2,300 customers worldwide and over 27,000 active members of our marketing community, which makes us the largest marketing automation solution or vendor out there, and we're certainly the largest independent solution working with multiple CRM systems. What we're known for is the fact that we combine being really easy to use, fast to get up and running, fast time to value, not a lot of complexity, but with power too. So there's no trade-offs. You don't run into a place where you got up and running fast, but then you're going to run out of headroom, eventually. And also complete. I showed you all that functionality that we have goes way beyond just email. So easy, powerful, and complete. And with that, we have time for a couple of questions. If there are any questions on the call, let's go tackle those now. You can also keep in touch with me. You can follow me on Twitter using @JohnMiller, and you're welcome to subscribe to our blog. I've got a great post up today, which was actually our 1,000th blog post. So feel free to check that out. With that, shall we take it away with questions?
Thank you, John. Let me see. We do have a question regarding a copy of the slides and the presentation, and we will make those available to you, so you will receive a follow-up email within the next 24 hours, and you will have access to that email will include a link and the slides. Any other questions? Again, you can use the panel on the GoToWebinar. The GoToWebinar panel, there is a section for questions. You can type in your questions. Okay, John, I think we're all set for questions. If you could just advance to the last slide. Thank you all for joining today. We will be continuing our series in July, and the third webinar in the series will focus on data and the cost of having dirty data in your customer data systems. I'm sure whether it be marketing automation or CRM. You are welcome to view the first, for those of you that missed maybe the first in this series, and that was the CMO imperative, and that is recorded. You can go to scribesoft.com/MAW for marketing automation webinars, and you can see that recording. This one will also be posted there, and that's the link that you'll receive. And then in September, we'll be continuing with improving the customer experience. Will be conducted by our partner, SilverPop. So again, thank you all. I'm just checking one more time. Yep, no more questions. So thank you all for attending today, and we look forward to seeing you in the future at these webinars.